There is not much separating man from animal. The only difference is that most animals kill for survival, they kill for nourishment, while it seems, on the other hand, some humans derive a sick and twisted pleasure in killing. They find a joy in a being's destruction. Truly, ask yourself who is the real animal. Truly, ask yourself who is the real animal.
Throughout mankind's history and existence, we've possessed the ability to hunt, the ability to stalk and kill and consume our prey. For without it, it would have meant our ancestors' own destruction. We gained nutrients, experience, and power from it. It allowed us to evolve into nature's most powerful predators as humans. But as millennia would pass and our species developed and refined our skills and ability to kill, the act of hunting had now left the confines of survival. We began to hunt a new prey, a much stronger and much more clever one that looked exactly like us. In the 1924 short story by Richard Connell, titled The Most Dangerous Game, he describes to us the act of killing for survival eventually loses its luster, and certain humans seek a much darker thrill. In today's episode, we'll examine throughout history of verifiable instances of human hunting for sport. Not a war, not a conflict, not a means of survival. Moments when humans turn their joy and thrill of a hunt into a wicked, murderous game. As early as ancient Greece, it is said that humans were hunted as sport. The ancient Spartans had a dark tradition of hunting members of their servant Heliot's population. Young upper-class Spartan men in military training were tasked with personally stalking, hunting, and ultimately murdering unsuspecting Helot victims. There was no limit to their brutality and no repercussions. The young men would kill at will. Accounts would detail on the brutality against the Helots, as the men learned the art of killing through the murder of them. This was all encouraged and deemed necessary to complete their final training, known as the agoge.
Is also one of the most brutal. Leonidas must sneak out of his barracks at night and murder a local slave called a helot.
Think about this for a second. Every culture throughout history has its own version of a male's rite of passage, when a boy crosses that threshold and becomes a man. In the Spartan society, you didn't become a man until you strangled someone to death.
A multitude of classic and prevalent examples of human hunting for sport have come from religious and ethnic persecution from nearly every corner of the globe. Most famously, the witch hunts through the 15th and 18th century, from the shores of early colonial America to the large cities of Western and Eastern Europe. people of certain races, religions, and cultures would be hunted down, and in many cases, hunted for the mere sport. One dark example with multiple accounts is the Gypsy Hunts of the late 17th century in the regions of the Netherlands, Denmark, Switzerland, and parts of Germany. Dark historical accounts detail how, with the aid of local police and military officials, members of the Roma people would be hunted for sport. Men, women, and children would all deem suitable prey. Accounts would detail how casually these so-called gypsy hunters would boast of their kills. An excerpt from a 17th century German chronicle from a supposed human hunter read as the following: "Today, one beautiful stag was slain, 5 does, 3 sizable wild boars, 9 smaller boars, along with 2 male gypsies, 1 female, and 1 baby gypsy. A fine day." On November 11th, 1835, another great gypsy hunt would take place, this time covering 4 districts of the Jutland region in Denmark. An eyewitness would describe the scene of the cavalier violence and killing that was taking place, with them writing the following: "The day had brought in a bag of over 260 men, women, and children. An aristocrat is said to have entered his list of the game he had killed during the day's hunting. He told me, along with a lot, a gypsy woman with her sucking babe." The scholar Heinrich Grellman would state his opinion on the hunts, writing, "They were not always looked upon as human creatures, for as only a hunting party. At one small German court, a mother and her child were shot like a couple of wild beasts. No mercy, no sympathy, just as an animal." From all accounts, during the gypsy hunts of the 17th century, the Roma people weren't seen as human creatures, and the act of killing them was simply the same to their persecutors as the thrill of a fox hunt would be. It was just a game to them, a sick and macabre tradition of mutilating and preserving Roma body parts was said to have taken place for years, with the hunters keeping trophies or souvenirs from their kills, with aristocrats said to have collected the severed limbs, noses, and ears of their victims, only to be exhibited in cabinets of curiosity inside their palace halls and rooms. Another extremely dark period of time with the prevalence of recorded accounts of human hunting came from the multiple colonial conquests of Western nations throughout the world. From the downfall of Native American tribes to the Dutch in the Congo, and even to the British destruction of the Aboriginals in Australia, the sick and twisted game of hunting humans for sport was prevalent throughout. When these colonial powerhouses swept into unsuspecting lands, they usually led with an iron fist. Whether for resources or for expansion, the ruling nations had no problem enacting swift and brutal laws, often, more than not, subjugating the local population, with the idea that these people were less than human, closer to that of animal. The act of killing them was no longer seen as murder, but simply a hunt, a sport, a game. Accounts from the Dutch-controlled Congo would detail how officers of King Leopold's army would casually order the killing and wipe out entire local villages for sport, with writing in diaries with the casual tone of a game hunt. The persecution and destruction of the Aboriginal people of Australia committed by the British was a systematic and brutal act of depopulation. For over 140 years of Australian history, a state-sanctioned and organized attempt to eradicate Aborigines people had taken place. Horrific accounts of the methodical and systematic hunting of again men, women, and children Aborigines. No limits to the British officers' depravities. One gruesome account from the occupied territory of Tasmania went as the following: "Tactics for hunting down Tasmanians include riding out on horseback to shoot them, setting out steel traps to catch them, and putting out poisoned flour where they might find and eat it. Shepherds would cut off the penis and testicles of Aboriginal men while they were still alive, just to watch the men run a few yards before bleeding out and dying. At a hillside christened Mount Victory, settlers slaughtered over 30 Tasmanians and threw their bodies over a cliff. One party of police killed 70 Tasmanian men, women, and children, ultimately dashing out the children's brains with the butts of their rifle.
Cockerbarron elder Kenny Jimmy recalled an event that occurred between the Staten and Nassau rivers on Cattle Creek around the turn of the last century.
From Croydon all through Normanton, come along the coast area for Cattle Creek, and that's why the Aboriginal people area was there. They was camping out. It happened, they come along and shot them old people in the water there while they was hunting in the water, swimming, hunting for fish, cattle. All my Aboriginal people was got shot there at Cattle Creek. The river was all bloodshed, and they picked them bodies up and just stacked them up in the sand ridge. Till today you can still see the bone.
On the other side of Cape York Peninsula, just north of Townsville, in the rainforests inland from Cardwell, the late Gurame elder Jack Marita recalled a mass poisoning at a place called Mumbai.
One day, my uncle come over from Kennedy Valley to visit the people here, and he had some relatives here. And as he come, there was silence. It sounds like nobody was around. And he come a bit closer, and he looked. It's not a sign of anyone movement of anybody. So he come a bit closer, and he can smell a big stink. Smell very strong. So he walked right up to the camp, and he seen it. The dead bodies are laying everywhere. And he believed that they was all been poisoned with the strychnine.
What happened at the site of the Gypsy massacre?
They told Beatty that Willie Lee told Beatty that they shot him out till nothing, cleaned him all out. And some of them was visiting on that day from some other camp. They were there, they got shot too. But they kept this so many young fella. They were teenagers, and they kept him. They take him away. They put a chain around their neck, and they lead him away. But the rest of it, wives and kids and everyone, babies and all. And Bessie was saying, and they go around with the axe, and they just, get the little kids and hit him on the head like a dog, hit him, kill him that way, see?
This sick and sadistic practice of human hunting would ultimately continue, growing more and more perverse with time. As the world slowly shifted, tragedy and conflict shifted as well. There was no longer witch hunts or colonial wars. The main contributors now to the game of human hunting was no longer about conquest or control of a population. It was now about the sheer thrill of the hunt. Accounts of sick and twisted individuals. One of the most familiar and modern examples is the exploits of Robert Hansen, also known as the Butcher Baker. Between 1972 and 1983, it was proven that Hansen had abducted, raped, and murdered at least 17 women in Alaska. Hansen is reported to have kidnapped young girls by forcing them at gunpoint into his vehicle, where he would ultimately torture and sexually assault them at his home before killing them. In several cases, Hansen would take the women and force them at gunpoint to join him in his bush plane, where he would then fly them to his remote cabin property near the Nick River in the treacherous Alaskan wilderness. It is said Hansen, in a sick and twisted game, would then strip the young women and force them out into the wilderness, giving them a head start, only for him to hunt after them with his Ruger rifle and a hunting knife. Hansen would track, stalk, and hunt the fleeing women, completely unfamiliar with the environment. Hansen would only be proven and convicted for the involvement in 17 girls' murders, but investigators believed he was responsible for many more. When Hansen was arrested at his home in Anchorage, Alaska, police had discovered a hidden map behind his headboard. On the map were 37 hand-drawn X's, marked throughout. After further study from investigators, it was believed that each X was a corresponding body's location. Police would search the area, but due to the remote locations and the harsh environment, many of the suspected bodies were never found, leaving way to mystery to the true scale of crimes of the human hunter, Robert Hansen. lastly are the tales of human hunting for sport during war times, when human morality and decency are at their lowest, where men are supposed to die with honor, instead meet depravity after depravity. For when at war, a man is no better than beast, sometimes far worse, killing for his pure enjoyment rather than his necessity, such as the tale of two Japanese officers during the Sino-Japanese War, Toshiaki Mokai and Takeshi Noda. The two were both Japanese Imperial Army lieutenants who became infamous for their involvement in a killing contest in the year of 1937 during Japan's advancement into Nanjing, China. The contest between the two lieutenants was simple: who could behead 100 victims first. It's described how the men agreed at the beginning of their push into China to participate in this macabre challenge, with ghastly details of how the men would line up and slaughter Chinese prisoners of war, only to boost their numbers in the competition. The event was even widely reported in Japanese press as a sporting event, with the Tokyo Nichi Shinbun newspaper covering the killing contest in 1937, interviewing the lieutenant Toshiaki Mukai, with him saying, and I quote, "Without realizing it, we had both surpassed 100 people. It was quite pleasant." The story goes that because it was difficult to determine which officer had killed 100 people first and ultimately won the contest, according to the journalists Asami Kazo and Suzuki Jiro, the lieutenants had decided to continue their contest, now the first to kill and behead 150 people with the sword, beginning on December 11th. The Tokyo Nichi headline on the 13th of December read, and I quote, "100-man killing contest super record, Makai at 106 and Noda at 105. The two second lieutenants continue their contest into overtime." The brutal killing, torture, and beheading of Chinese prisoners of war seemed to be just a game to the public, but ultimately, once Japan had surrendered at the end of World War II, Toshiaki Makai and Takeshi Noda would be convicted for their crimes, sentenced to death at the Nanjing War Crime Tribunals in 1948. The two Japanese Imperial lieutenants would be executed, put down by firing squad, in the same city they had wreaked havoc in Nanjing, China, marking an end to their sick and twisted killing competition.
He disobeyed the rules by not staying in the car.
He didn't stay in the car. His head was cut off.
It was an honorable death, a contest between two officers, very popular in Japan.
What contest?
Who decapitates the most enemies? Our newspapers report this daily.
Yosh!
Lastly, long rumors circulating throughout post-war Bosnia, the tales of snipers of Sarajevo would continue to haunt all. Dark and morbid tales of rich civilians traveling to the besieged city of Sarajevo during the Bosnian War to pay for their chance to hunt innocent civilians of the city, picking off man, woman, and child. It's described how these foreign citizens would pay large sums of money to military forces to allow them to hunt and kill. It's described how wealthy Americans, French, Italians, Russians, and more would arrive on the outskirts of the besieged city, and once paying a hefty premium, they would be escorted to hills and tall buildings throughout the city, where there, at their leisure, they would hunt. Civilians in Sarajevo and the outskirts of the city described how during the siege of the city, they would see these odd foreigners roaming about, definitely not locals, and wearing closer to sport or hunting attire rather than military wear, and how their rifles were much different than the soldiers alongside them, and how they were much nicer in quality, long believed to be a dark rumor. As time has passed, and more soldiers from both sides of the Bosnian War have spoken out in the following decades, validity seems to grow. And guys, that's the end of the video. Whether you listen to the audio format or watch the visual aspect, I want to thank you so much if you got all the way to the end. And real quick, touching on that last topic, there's a great documentary titled Sarajevo Safari that recently just came out, and it's just shows you in detail different different aspects of the story of the snipers of Sarajevo tale. A really well-made piece of journalism, and I'd recommend it highly. Check that out. But yeah, guys, thank you so much if you listened all the way to the end or you watched all the way to the end. I truly appreciate it. Any interaction with the video, a comment, a like, a subscription is highly appreciated. I'll be covering a couple more topics from this video in more detail, like the story of the Japanese killing contest and the story of Robert Hansen. I hope to do a couple of future videos on those subjects a little more in detail just because they're so interesting. But guys, thank you so much again. Take care and have a good one.